Hello everybody, welcome to Snyder's Inc. and today we got a mystery case video, and this is 5 real scary, mysterious cases with creepy CCTV footage, and we gonna get right into it, ladies and gentlemen. The like button, subscribe, and comment down below. Let's go!
With so many CCTV cameras present on business premises, in private homes, and even on the street these days, one would think that crime rates would plummet, since it's becoming harder and harder to get away with the crime without being identified. But this isn't always the case, as criminals are often caught by these cameras as they carry out their crimes but aren't identified, even when the footage is crystal clear, and investigators then rely on members of the public who often recognize these perpetrators, and they can then finally be brought to justice. Number 5. Some people have a really hard time growing up, either because of their family's financial situation, mental issues in the home, or in many cases, because there's an element of alcoholism in the family. But some of these unlucky individuals manage to find a way to overcome the tough hand that they've been dealt, and end up making a success of their life. Unfortunately, for every success story, there's another that ends badly, when someone relapses in their old way of life, often leading to tragedy. One such success story involves a 20-year-old woman named Shelby Thornburg, who...
Okay, so the first comment I saw was about a girl named Shelby, so I'm gonna assume it's about this one.
Who in 2015 had aspirations of becoming a model, and she was doing everything in her power.
She looks like a model. I give him that. She does look like someone who would be a model.
To make her dreams come true. Shelby and her sister, Christina, didn't have the best time during their childhoods. They spent a lot of their time either in foster care or dealing with their mother's alcoholism, which played a major part in their development, since she was unable to care for them properly like a good parent should. As with many children in the system, they had to endure horrible conditions at times, all the while hoping that they would be placed in a loving and caring home, where they could be taken care of by foster parents who wanted them to excel in life. Likely because of these overwhelming issues, Shelby became overweight at an early age, which eventually led to obesity. She struggled to gain control of her weight, but it was only in the last few years, before she lost her life, that she was able to do so through sheer perseverance and hard work, losing 180 pounds in the process.
Woo! That's pretty well done. Losing 180 pounds is an accomplishment should be made proud of, no matter what. Because if that's the thing and you put all your effort in and you achieve that, that is amazing.
Because of their family's situation and her struggles with her weight, Shelby suffered from bouts of depression, but she could always count on Christina, who was her elder, for encouragement and help when she needed. The two sisters would eventually move to Houston, Texas together, where Christina helped Shelby get control of her weight. Feeling more confident than ever, Shelby met a man named Marcus Dwayne Johnson, and they started dating.
Marcus Dwayne Johnson? That's amazing. That anyone who has a name Dwayne Johnson in their name is incredible to me. I know it ain't Dwayne. It ain't the Dwayne Johnson. There you go. But I still just find it funny.
She also managed to find her own apartment in an upper-end high-rise building. Things seemed to be working out for Shelby, and she started thinking about a career in modeling. At this point, Christina says she felt she could relax as far as her sister was concerned, since she seemed to have taken control over her life and had ambitions for what she wanted to become. But Shelby felt that her extreme weight loss, from almost 300 pounds down to 120, left her with some work to still do, and she made inquiries about getting a tummy tuck. But this didn't come with a cheap price tag, and she knew she had to find a way to make a good deal of money quickly, or give up on her modeling ambitions for the time being. Her boyfriend then suggested that she become a high-end escort, a job that Christina didn't approve of. But Shelby assured her that she was only accompanying her clients to dinners and parties, and that there...
Oh, woman. Why would why would any boyfriend at all make that as a suggestion. If I was trying to think, the last thing I would try to push my girl towards is an escort service. That's the last place I would want my girl being at. No. I mean, if that was her career, she chose it, that's fine, but I would never push her towards that. That's ridiculous.
There wasn't anything for her to worry about. The plan started to pay off, and in a short time, Shelby was able to make a down payment on the plastic surgery that she wanted. Christina wasn't as excited about her sister's newfound success, though, as she was certain that she would eventually receive a phone call informing her that Shelby had been arrested for street work. In April of 2015, her fears came true when Shelby was arrested on that very charge in Dallas County. At her hearing, she pleaded no contest and was ordered to serve 33 days in jail, and she was handed a fine. After she was released, Christina asked her about the arrest, and Shelby told her that it was in an unfortunate incident where she just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. She claimed that she was merely passing by an area where a lot of street workers are known to work when she was arrested along with another woman who was actually the guilty party. 2 months later, she would...
You can't honestly expect me to believe that, right? You couldn't honestly expect me to believe you just happened to be around a bunch of street workers, not doing anything, and just happened to be arrested. No, I don't buy that at all. Not for a second.
be arrested on that same charge once again in Houston, but fortunately, the charges in that case were dropped. Christina started to realize that her sister was headed down a dark road, and so she asked her to take some time off from her job. She stated that she was worried that Shelby may get hurt or worse, killed while working, but Shelby replied that she was worried that Johnson, her boyfriend, would get angry if she tried to leave and even end her life. It had now become apparent that Johnson wasn't Shelby's boyfriend, but rather her boss.
That's why he pushed her. That's why he pushed her. You always know the thing. The guy wants to be in charge and wants to be the pimp to her. And wants to be her boss and wants to tell her what to do. And that is why he pushed her towards that direction. That makes total sense now. What an asshole.
And she decided to keep working despite being arrested twice already at this point. Things would likely have turned out very differently for Shelby if she had taken her sister's advice. But on the 4th of November, 2015, things took a tragic turn. That night, Shelby had an appointment to meet with a man at her apartment at around 8:30, and she notified Johnson of her plans. She received a text from the man at 8:33 in which he stated that he had arrived at 8:34. He was caught on CCTV security footage as he entered her apartment building at the Conquistador Apartments. 7 minutes later at 8:40, Johnson received a text from Shelby which simply read, "God." He would later explain that this was a code word they used to confirm that everything was going as planned, and that the man had paid her as agreed. 17 minutes after that, at 8:57 p.m., the same man was caught by security cameras once more as he exited the building, but Johnson got no word from Shelby. He then tried calling her on her cell phone but got no answer, and so he decided to check the apartment. To his surprise, he found Shelby deceased and immediately called 911, stating, "Someone is dead, someone murdered my girl." Police officers, rather than homicide detectives, were dispatched to the scene, and only after they confirmed that Shelby was deceased were detectives sent to the apartment. They found that her life had been ended with a large sharpened blade, and that the attack had been carried out from behind. People who were present at the crime scene stated that there were so many uniformed officers present inside the apartment that some evidence had likely been destroyed.
Yeah.
Luckily, detectives were able to collect DNA evidence from the scene, but when it was sent to be analyzed, no matches were found, and Shelby's killer remained unidentified. With no leads to follow up on, investigators released the CCTV footage of their suspect to the public and described him as Caucasian, wearing a light-colored long-sleeve shirt with shorts and shoes. It's believed that the man targeted Shelby because of her appearance, since his phone records, which were obtained thanks to the messages he exchanged with Shelby, showed that he attempted to contact other women with similar features in the days leading up to her murder. He also used a burner phone, which can be discarded after use, which has led many people to speculate that he may be a serial killer. Investigators noted that the man in the CCTV footage left Shelby's building wearing the same clothes he had on when he arrived, but he had no biological material stains on any of his clothing. This has led to speculation that he had knowledge of how to carry out this attack without getting any evidence on him, and it's certain that he planned his crime well in advance. The man has not been identified, and Shelby's case...
Well, it depends, right? Did he strangle her or something? I'm gonna assume that's why. That's the plan, right? Like, he strangled her from behind. That's my guess. I don't think they said. He strangled her from behind, now that's how she died, and then... So there'd be no blood or anything on him.
Remains under investigation. Christina has started a GoFundMe page to raise a reward of $20,000 for anyone who comes forward with information that leads to Shelby's attacker. She stated that she's attempting to have the man caught before he's able to repeat his attack on someone else, since this is a very real possibility. The surveillance footage from Shelby's building has been enhanced by Doug Carner, a video forensic analyst, who found that the man seems to be wearing sunglasses and that he has a receding hairline. He was also able to pick out potential witnesses who may have seen the man as he exited the building, and investigators have asked anyone who may have done so to contact Crime Stoppers Houston at 713-222-8477. Number 4. CCTV security footage is an immeasurably valuable tool for investigators during a missing person investigation, but these systems aren't always kept in good shape, and every so often they fail at just the wrong moment, and vital evidence is lost forever. This can be detrimental to any missing person case, and in some instances, it can bring it to a complete halt, which is exactly what happened in the case concerning 25-year-old Mercedes Clement, who mysteriously disappeared in October of 2020 in Dallas, Texas. Mercedes is...
2 cases in Texas? 2 cases in Texas were already? Okay.
Mother, Alicia Gazzotti, describes her as having a heart of gold since she's always thinking of the needs of others, often saving some of her money to give to homeless people in the area. She also volunteered at a local youth group, and on one occasion, she came across a woman who had been assaulted. Since the woman had nowhere to go, Mercedes brought her back to her family's home, where she lived for the next 2 years, giving us further insight into Mercedes' personality. But her life would take a tragic turn on the 11th of October, 2020. At around 10:30 p.m. that night, she made a series of worrisome phone calls to a few of her friends, stating that she needed help. In one of the phone calls, she told her friend that she was scared and that she needed a ride back to her car. Before her friend could respond, everything went strangely quiet, before Mercedes was heard saying, "I've got to go," and the line went dead. But things would only get stranger from here. The following day, Alicia received a letter stating that Mercedes' car had been towed, and Alicia instantly knew that something was wrong, since Mercedes wouldn't simply abandon her vehicle. She immediately drove to the impound lot to collect the car, and became even more concerned by what she found inside. Mercedes' purse and wallet were still in the car, along with her keys that had been left on the passenger seat. Strangely, Alicia also found a piece of Mercedes' underwear on the same seat, and she was now convinced that something sinister was going on, and that Mercedes was in some kind of danger. But she was hopeful that she would be proved wrong. When no word had been heard from Mercedes 4 days later, Alicia's fears only intensified, and on the 26th of October, her family decided to file a missing person case, and an investigation was immediately launched. Investigators found CCTV surveillance footage from the Cocoa Apartments in Dallas, where she can be seen walking across the parking lot with a man who was known to Mercedes' family at the time. The pair is then seen walking into the man's apartment, and she's never seen or heard from again after this. This is due to the fact that the CCTV security system suddenly glitched at around 1:30 a.m. and only started recording again about 7 hours later, which means that crucial footage that might have greatly aided the investigation was lost and could not be retrieved since there was no recording. Detectives contacted the surveillance camera's manufacturer to ask whether it was common for these systems to simply stop recording, and they replied that it was a rare event indeed, and that there was no explanation for it. For the next 9 months, no further evidence was found, and Mercedes' case was upgraded from a missing person investigation to a homicide case. The man who is seen in the surveillance footage walking with Mercedes was eventually identified as 36-year-old Tanner Lawson, but he's been uncooperative and refuses to speak to investigators.
Found your suspect. Last one to see her, won't cooperate with police, happens to live in last thing. You expect me to believe he is not the number one suspect here? If he isn't your number one suspect, y'all stupid, y'all bad at policing. Easily the number one suspect. It's not even questionable if he is or isn't. He absolutely is.
At the time, he was serving in prison for an unrelated incident and maintains that he doesn't have any information on Mercedes' disappearance. Detectives have since made contact with people from Mercedes' past, as they've identified several people of interest who they know are or were involved in illegal substances, but no further solid leads have been found. Strangely, it was noted that in the surveillance footage, Mercedes can be seen carrying the same purse that was found on the passenger seat of her car, and it's been speculated that she either made it back to her car at some point, or that someone took the purse back to the car and planned to retrieve it later, but couldn't do so before the vehicle was towed. Unfortunately, Mercedes' remains were found in Princeton 2 years after she disappeared. The discovery was made in a wooded area close to Lavon Lake, just under an hour away from Dallas, where Mercedes went missing, and they were identified with the use of dental records. Investigators have opted not to reveal whether Tanner Lawson is still a suspect in the case, but have stated that no one has been ruled out as a suspect yet. At present, Mercedes' attacker has not been identified, and Dallas investigators have asked anyone who has information on the case to contact Detective Patty Bello at 214-671-3603. Or alternatively, you can email patty.bellow, spelled B-E-L-E-W, at dallaspolice.gov. Investigators have reiterated that they will follow up on every lead that they receive, and that they continue to look for clues as to what happened to Mercedes that night, and to identify the person responsible for her untimely passing. Number 3. In some cases where CCTV footage is used as evidence, one small detail in the footage can turn an investigation on its head. When an alternate motive for the crime is established, it needs to be approached from a completely different angle. What was first considered to be a missing person investigation may suddenly become a homicide case, or what seemed like a robbery could suddenly become an abduction case instead, depending on the footage that was gathered. This was the case in the investigation that followed the murder of Chelsea Small, a 30-year-old woman from Taylor, Michigan, who lost her life during what investigators initially thought was nothing more than an armed robbery. But it's now come to light that there may be more to the case than meets the eye. At the time, Chelsea was working at an Advance America store, which provides cash advances to people who are awaiting their paychecks.
Oh, okay.
The store is located on the 8-lane Telegraph Road and is situated inside a strip mall with various other businesses surrounding it. Chelsea was supposed to have the day off on the 12th of November, 2013, but she switched shifts with one of her coworkers at the very last minute, and she would be working alone for the duration of her shift, which was a common occurrence. The store was also fitted with multiple security features, including cameras and a panic button behind the desk, ensuring it was as safe as possible since the store held large amounts of cash that would have been very tempting to any brazen robber. The staff was also in the habit of keeping all the store's doors locked during business hours, which meant that no one could enter the building without being let in after they pressed a buzzer, which is located outside the front door. Chelsea's mother told investigators that she had a short phone call with her daughter that morning at around 10:30 a.m., after which she went to the bank to deposit money from the store. None of her family or friends had any contact with her after that, and they would never speak to her again. Security footage from the store showed that a man arrived at the store at around 12 o'clock and pressed the buzzer to be let in. It would now be up to Chelsea to decide whether she wanted to let him in, which she then did. There's no indication that she suspected anything untoward from him, since she had an agreement with her mother that if she felt unsafe, she would call her and keep her on the line until the person left the store, and she didn't do so on this day. It could be that the man didn't seem threatening, or that she had met him before, but this is mere speculation. The man, who can be seen in the security footage wearing a black hat, a dark-sleeved top, and black pants with light-colored shoes, was only in the store for about a minute, but those 60 seconds would bring about the end of Chelsea's life. As soon as he entered the store, the man walked up to Chelsea's counter and produced a firearm. The footage shows Chelsea thinking quickly as she pressed the panic button that's situated under her desk, but the man responds by firing his weapon at her, causing her to fall to the floor. He then walks around to her desk and fires again, ending her life. For the rest of the time that he's in the store, he searches around to steal whatever he can find, and after all is said and done, he makes his escape with a mere $200 in his pocket, knowing that the police have been summoned with the panic button. Given the time of day, many people would have been present in the strip mall, either having lunch or just taking a break from work, causing investigators to believe that the man didn't care about being seen after he carried out the attack. It's also been suggested that he walks with a slight limp in the security footage, but this is far from a certainty. Investigators also noticed that he seems to have a hunch when standing still, and that he's of a heavier build. When the CCTV footage was reviewed, one of the first details that stood out was that the man had a suppressor affixed to the barrel of his firearm, something that's very rarely seen during something as brazen as a robbery. This has led many people to believe that he wasn't actually there with the intention of robbing the store, but that this was a personal attack on Chelsea. But the man's motive remains a mystery if this is indeed the case. It could, of course, be the case that he simply didn't want to attract too much attention while carrying out the crime.
It is interesting that he immediately went for... He went in there, she pressed the panic button, and he immediately shot her. Like, immediately. Either he knew she pressed the panic button, or he just planned there and shot her. It is easy to think, because also, right, if his goal was to rob that store at full thing, you wouldn't kill her. You'd keep her alive, because if that thing has loads of cash, right, it's a place where they give you money in exchange for shit. They're going to have loads of cash, so if you're going to do it...
But it does indicate that he was fully intending to discharge his weapon at some point. Whatever the case may be, it seems strange that he would go to such lengths to be as quiet as possible, but then walk through the strip mall without worrying whether he would be seen by the dozens of people that would be present. Investigators also noted that the man seemed very comfortable with the weapon, and it became apparent that he'd used one on multiple occasions before, either recreationally or during other crimes that he had committed. The ammunition that was found at the crime scene was placed in a database to look for matches, but this failed to produce any results. It isn't certain from the security footage whether the man was wearing gloves or not, but investigators were unable to lift any fingerprints from the scene, despite the man being seen in the footage touching many of the counters and surfaces in the store. The footage from the store is unfortunately quite grainy, and it's impossible to see the man's face clearly. It has, however, been suggested that he isn't wearing his normal clothes, as they seem too baggy for him, and this was likely done on purpose to conceal his identity even further. Another factor that may point to a targeted attack, rather than a robbery, is the fact that the man fired at Chelsea as soon as he reached the counter. He would have had a much better chance of stealing a lot more money if he had instructed her to help him gather as much cash as possible, but instead he had to look for it himself after the fact. Investigators also found it strange that he seemed very calm while rummaging through the store, since he knew that Chelsea had pressed the panic button and that the police would be on their way while he was still in the store. There's also the possibility that the man intended to attack Chelsea's coworker, since she had switched shifts at the last minute. The man may have realized that he had the wrong person, but then couldn't take the chance that Chelsea may be able to identify him. There have been no further leads in the case, and the $50,000...
That's a good thought process there. That's actually a good theory. He went there with the goal of taking out the co-worker, which explains because she might know who he is and she might know something about him. But he went there and instead Chelsea was there instead, and since he couldn't take the chance of her, since she probably knew who he was, couldn't take the chance on it, so he shot her and killed her.
$1,000 reward is being offered.
And then probably took money, not because he actually wanted money, but he tried to make it look like a robbery. He just was bad at it.
To anyone who has information that leads to the identification of Chelsea's attacker, with an additional $2,500 being offered by Crime Stoppers. Interestingly, a man was caught on surveillance footage 6 months earlier during a robbery in Jackson, Michigan, in which he could be seen stealing suppressors from a sporting goods store, It was noted that the man who carried out the robbery had similar traits as the man who ended Chelsea's life, but it's not been established whether they're the same person. The man in that robbery has also not been identified. For the time being, though, Chelsea's case still remains an unsolved mystery, with many questions and very few answers. If you have any information that could be helpful in the case, you're asked to get in touch with Crime Stoppers of Michigan at 1-800-773-2587. You can choose to remain anonymous if you prefer to. Number 2. The case of Eliza Sherman's murder is one with many strange and confusing details. And more than a decade after she lost her life, there's still no indication who carried out the attack or what their motive may have been. On the 24th of March, 2013, Eliza, an in vitro fertilization nurse, was said to meet with her divorce lawyer at 75 Erie View Plaza in Cleveland, Ohio. But instead, she was attacked by a man with a sharpened blade, and she would never return home. Eliza's daughter...
Oh, this is the one where I think is this the one I think of where I think I think the lawyer is a suspect here? The lawyer has to be a suspect. I can't write that lawyer out. No matter how much they tell me police have cleared him, I can't do it. It's just too perfectly there that he delayed coming down before her life gets taken. I can't rule him out. I can't. I don't know how police can, but I just can't.
Daughter Jennifer told investigators that on that day, she'd been studying for a pharmacology exam that she would be sitting at Case Western Reserve University. She received a text message from Eliza at 2:55 p.m. in which she stated that she was about to meet with her divorce lawyer, Gregory Moore, to go over the final details of her divorce proceedings, which would have taken place 2 days later. She then received another text from her brother, Jeremy, as he wanted to know where Eliza was and if Jennifer was with her. She told him what Eliza's plans were, and that she had promised to bring pizza home once she was done with the meeting. But as soon as the afternoon passed by, they received no further word from Eliza, and by 7:45 that evening, they started to become concerned since she was supposed to be home long before then. Eliza and Jennifer were in the habit of keeping in touch multiple times a day, and she found it strange that her mother hadn't notified her that she would be late. She then called Eliza's cell phone but got no answer, which was very worrying. After another failed attempt at contacting her mother, Jennifer phoned Jeremy to ask if he had heard from her. He stated that Eliza told him that she would be running some errands while heading over to her mother Doris's house in Cleveland Heights, where she needed to collect some medication. After another failed call to her mother's phone, Jennifer tried contacting Moore's office, since he would have seen her earlier that day, but she received no answer there either. She was starting to panic and decided to head out to look for her mother on her own. She continued to call Eliza's phone while searching, but she never answered. Then, a short while later, Jennifer received a call from Doris, asking if she knew where Eliza was. She had been calling her for the past few hours, but couldn't reach her, and they all started to fear that something had happened to her. She then received a call from Jeremy, in which he told her that she needed to come to Beechwood, where he, Eliza, and Sanford, their father, lived, since the police wanted to talk to them all at the same time. She contacted her boyfriend and told him to meet her at the house, which he did around 10 minutes later, and they would be informed that Eliza had been attacked by a man with a sharpened blade, and that she had unfortunately passed away. Eliza had indeed arrived at her attorney's office, but never made it inside as she was attacked about 30 feet from the entrance. Someone who worked at the plaza heard Eliza screaming and rushed to help, but found that she was badly injured. They called 911 and stayed with her, but it was too late, and she was declared deceased at 6:14 p.m. after being transported to a medical center. When the investigation into Eliza's case was launched, investigators quickly found CCTV footage from outside the building. In it, a person wearing jeans and a green hoodie can be seen running away from the scene, and it's believed that they're the one who carried out the attack. They seemed to be running with a limp, but due to the poor quality of the footage, it was impossible to identify them or even see whether it was a man or a woman. What is pretty much certain is that this was no random attack or robbery, since she was wearing jewelry, including a sapphire ring, a necklace, and her father's wedding ring, none of which were stolen. Investigators interviewed employees who worked at the plaza and in Moore's office, including Moore himself, but found no further leads. They even searched the Sherman's house for blades that could have been used in the attack, but found that none of them in the house were viable options. A year later, it would come to light that Moore, Eliza's attorney, hadn't been entirely truthful when he was questioned. It was found that he had messaged Eliza several times to inform her that he was waiting for her in his office, but his phone records showed that he had left his office an hour before their scheduled meeting, and only returned an hour after she had been attacked. He was charged with tampering with evidence, falsification, obstructing official business, forgery, and telecommunications fraud. This was backed up by data from his electronic key card, and witnesses in the plaza who saw him leave and return. He was ultimately sentenced to 6 months in prison, with 3 years of probation and 350 hours of community service added. Moore has denied the charges and decided to plead not guilty. He's also in trouble for causing panic in 2012, when he phoned 3 different courthouses where he was supposed to appear with his clients and made statements that there was explosive devices in the building. It's never been determined why Moore lied to Eliza about being in the building, and no arrests have ever been made in her case, which is now more than a decade old. A $100,000 reward is being offered to anyone who can identify the individual seen running from the scene of the attack in the security footage, and a Facebook page has been set up to keep anyone who's interested informed about the ongoing investigation. Jennifer has filed a lawsuit against her father after she discovered that he and 5 other people had stolen more than $2 million from a bank account that he shared with Eliza, but it's uncertain whether he had anything to do with the attack that ended her life. The case has seen very little movement in the past 10 years, and no arrests have been made and no suspects have been identified. The person seen running away from the scene has also not been identified, and investigators welcome any leads that anyone has that could bring a close to Eliza's case. If you have any information on this case, you're asked to contact Crime Stoppers at 216-252-7463. Number 1. In July of 2008, 56-year-old Linda Rollerson was an employee at a Joy American food store in Lake City, Florida, where she worked as a clerk. On the 22nd of July, a man entered and robbed the store with a firearm that he then used to end her life, and her case remains unsolved to this day. Linda had worked at the store for 6 years at this point, but this day would be unlike any other, and her family is still reeling from the loss and the fact that her attacker is likely still walking around freely, as he's still not been identified. What makes matters worse is the fact that Linda could have walked out of the store that day after the robbery had taken place, since she did nothing but comply with the robber's demands and did nothing to justify him taking her life. At around 8:30 p.m. that evening, a white 4-door Buick Regal, believed to be from the early to mid-90s with black trim, pulled into the parking lot in front of the store, and a man got out before making his way over to the store where Linda was going about her day. Thanks to the surveillance footage from the scene, he's known to be African American and tall, standing between 5'10" and 6'2" high. He has an average build, and in the footage can be seen wearing a dark hooded sweatshirt with a baseball hat on his head to help hide his identity. He's also wearing a striped shirt under the hoodie, denim shorts that end below the knee, white shoes and sunglasses. As he enters the store, the man walks over to Linda's counter and pulls out a firearm, which he then points at her. With no warning, no discussion, and no provocation, the man suddenly pulls the trigger, causing Linda to let out a scream, which could be heard on the store's security camera audio. It also captured the man's voice in the seconds that followed as he completed the robbery and ended Linda's life. Immediately after firing the shot, he yells, "Open it up, open it up," presumably referring to the cash register in front of her. Linda can be heard saying something back, but the audio isn't clear, and it isn't certain what she said to him, but it certainly wasn't confrontational, as she was complying with his demands throughout. He then yells for her to hurry up and hand him the money. Linda can then be seen opening her cash register's drawer, from which she removes several bills and hands them to the man who still has a firearm pointed at her. He continues to yell at her while she does her best to get all of the money out of the drawer, and when she finally hands him the last bills, he seems to think that there's more, as he can be heard yelling, "Pick it up, pick the black thing up," likely referring to the cash drawer, which he seems unable to identify for some reason. Likely baffled by his last statement, Linda picks the cash drawer up and shows it to the robber, to show that she's handed him everything she had. And in most robberies, this would be the point where the robber stuffs his pockets full of cash and makes a dash for the door to get away. But this man has other ideas. Once again, he yells for her to hand over the money, but she has none left, and she shows him the drawer again, saying, "There." Strangely, and with no provocation whatsoever, the man then raises his weapon and fires again, this time hitting Linda and ending her life before fleeing. No one heard the sounds of the firearm being discharged, and it would be a further 15 minutes before Linda was found by customers who then entered the store. This isn't uncommon, since the store was known to not be very busy, as there was an S&S store across the road that saw a lot more business. They immediately called the police, who rushed to the scene, but found it was far too late to save Linda, and she was pronounced deceased at the scene. In an effort to track the robber down as quickly as possible, officers used tracker dogs to pick up the man's scent, which they were able to follow to the interstate, where it appeared that he then headed east. The surveillance footage showed the robber getting back into his car and backing up a short distance before making his getaway from the store. Investigators scoured the footage in an effort to learn as much about the man as possible, which was very little. They suspect that he was from out of town and that this wasn't the first robbery he had carried out, since he was very adept at hiding his identity by pulling his baseball hat and hood down over his head to conceal his face. This theory was further bolstered by the fact that he immediately walked over to Linda's counter and quickly produced his firearm as a show of aggression and intimidation, but they found it strange that he immediately discharged the weapon, since this could cause the victim to panic and start fumbling with the cash that he's trying to get his hands on. It's very likely that this man has carried out further robberies after attacking Linda, as he seems comfortable in the role and would likely continue to use robbery as an easy payday. Investigators have stated that they're desperate to find the robber and take him into custody, since it's clear that he's a violent individual who may end more lives if he isn't brought to justice swiftly. It's been 15 years since he entered the store and ended Linda's life, and with each passing year, it seems less likely that he'll be identified and made to pay for his heinous crime. It's been speculated that the robber chose to end Linda's life, either because he was worried that she had seen his face, or because she had seen him in the past, possibly as a customer at the store. It could also be possible that he had been identified by a clerk at another store during a previous robbery, and that he didn't want to make the same mistake again. There's also a strong possibility that he's addicted to illegal substances, and that he makes a habit of carrying out robberies to feed his addiction, which makes him all the more dangerous, since he could be in an unstable emotional state at any given time. But to this day, Linda's killer has not been identified, and investigators continue to hold out hope that someone will come forward with useful information one day. If you think you recognize this man or have any information on Linda's case, you're asked to contact Crime Stoppers at 386-754-7099. Thank you guys so much for...
Ladies and gentlemen, that is it for this reaction video. Let me know what you think in the comments. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Thank y'all for watching. I'll see y'all for the next one.